International Affairs here at IRES, the Institute for European, Russian, and Eurasian Studies. And I'm also a co-director of the program PONARS Eurasia, the program on new approaches to research and security in Eurasia. So together, our institute and PONARS Eurasia are very happy to host Vladimir Gelman today, who I think it's fair to say, you can certainly make a strong argument that he's Russia's top political scientist and works on politics of Russia, which is a challenging environment, I think, in many ways. And he'll be presenting on his new book called Authoritarian Russia. And I think this book is going to have a major impact. I certainly anticipate using it in my classrooms now that it's out. And it really, I just say, I think it represents, I mean, he's still young, but what for most people would be a whole lifetime's worth of research on Russia, on a whole variety of its different features and aspects. And so his current position is he's a professor of political science and sociology at the European University in St. Petersburg, so one of the independent universities there. And he is also now, for half of his time, Finland Distinguished Professor at the Authoritarian Institute of the University of Helsinki in Finland. So he commutes regularly between Helsinki and St. Petersburg, which are actually fairly close. I don't want to talk anymore. I want to hand the floor over to Vladimir, but please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you, Tim. Let me thank IRS and George Washington University for organizing this book talk, which is about this book entitled Authoritarian Russia, Analyzing Post-Soviet Regime Changes. And I have a book copy with me. I will pass it along the room, and I promise that those who will offer the most interesting question or comment will receive a copy of the book. So it was a moment of not only not only of self-promotion, but also a moment of encouraging your interests, your activism, and the like. And yeah, may pass it along. You can have a look, then I'll pass to something. You know, it's always a challenge to write a book about current events. It's much more easy to write something about events which passed decades or centuries ago, because you know what happened afterwards. For me, writing a book about current developments was a challenge because of so rapid change of political landscape that sometimes I realize that probably book will be outdated before the publication. And the cover for this book, it was designed by the University of Pittsburgh Press, was chosen in December 2014. I approved this cover. It looks fairly nice, and for those who are familiar with Russian cultural landscape, it's a picture of Moskvoretsky Tower of Moscow Kremlin. I got the proofs of the book 27th of February this year. And some hours after that, exactly opposite to this Moskvoretsky Tower of the Kremlin, Boris Nemtsov was assassinated. You see here, you may observe on the picture cameras which were shut down exactly at that moment. So it was a kind of well, being a prophet against my will, and of course, when I got the proofs, I can't change anything with the book. I just added the very last footnote. So it's some sort of intellectual challenge, and in order to not to follow this timeline of current events, I covered developments of the last quarter century. And the major question of the book, why over this quarter century Russia transformed from Soviet version, communist version of authoritarianism to post-Soviet electoral version of authoritarianism. Why and how it occurred, what was the logic of regime changes over this period, what are the major features of this regime, institutional foundations, political pillars, and what we might expect for the foreseeable future. These developments started immediately after the Soviet collapse, but my basic answer on this question has been received a little bit earlier, in the summer of 2000. This was a personal experience. In the summer of 2000, I was quarter century younger, an activist of emerging pro-democratic movement, which won first ever competitive elections to the city council in then Leningrad. And I was very active in this election campaign. And after this victory, I got two different job offers from two teams of my acquaintances of that time. One was a team of sociologists who were interested in study of emerging social and political activism, and they argued that because of my insider knowledge of local politics, I may elaborate my future career as an expert on this field. Yet another group was a team of newly elected members of the city council who argued that because of my experience and reputation on some sort of organizing democratic activism, I may be useful for improving the work of city council, so they suggest me to join the apparatus of the city council. And this option sounds tempting, and after several rounds of communication with various people, it was an interesting time, and actually this was a time when I first ever time met a foreign scholar who just sit opposite me. Bob Orton at that time was a graduate student who conducted his dissertation research exactly on these events. So I got an opportunity to come for a job interview to just elected chair of the city council, Anatoly Sobchak, who was by that time one of the most popular politicians in the country. He was famous because of his brave and bright speeches on the Congress of People's Deputies, and local councillors invited him to be a chair of the city council. So I went to a job interview. Sobchak was late, and while waiting him, I had a nice chat with a receptionist guy of my age named Dima, who was very nice, very smiling, very talkative. I don't remember how long I waited for Mr. Sobchak, but finally he came. We went to his office, and it was probably the most strangest job interview in in the world, because it was endless talk of my would-be boss. I think he just used an opportunity as a testing ground for preparing for one of his bright speeches, and he talked probably endlessly. It was really very bright speech, but rather vague in substance. Well, he complained about current turbulence, blamed the communist regime and the like. And finally he stopped for a while, and I used this opportunity to ask him a question. And the question was, please tell how you perceive the system of city government which you would like to build. And Sobchak very frankly explained that, hey, there are numerous city council deputies who are very poorly organized, very noisy, sometimes irrelevant, and they should work with their constituencies, respond to complaints of local residents, and the like. Then there is an executive committee of the city council which should be in charge of everyday routines like leaking pipes and so on. And finally, Sobchak told, I myself, with my apparatus, will conduct politics in the city. For me it was something shocking, and I was very young, very naive, and I posed him a question, Mr. Sobchak, and what about democracy? And Sobchak turned to me, and he responded very briefly and very shamelessly with one sentence. We are in power, that is democracy. In Russian, мы теперь у власти, это и есть демократия. I was so shocked that I turned my back to him, and even without saying goodbye, came walking to the Institute of Sociology. So it was a kind of turning point of my entire career, and I choose study of politics rather than politics itself. And I must confess that over this quarter century I not received any formal education in social and political science, but probably the lesson I learned in the room of Mr. Sobchak at that day in August 1990 worth dozens of textbooks in normative political theory. What I realized, that politics is about power aspirations. Every politician is by and large a power maximizer, and he or she would like to stay in power as long as possible and to maximize power as much as possible. The problem is that in some circumstances politicians are able to do so, but in others they fail to maximize their power. I would not focus on the very fact that most of politicians would keep their aspirations in secret and never openly say it. Okay. So this was the lesson I learned at that memorable day. But Mr. Sobchak actually failed to maximize his power. In 1996, he lost in a very fierce battle with one of his deputies, and lost gubernatorial elections and no longer been in power. However, his yet another deputy, namely Mr. Putin, learned certain lessons from his boss about power maximization, and he performed in this regard much better than Mr. Sobchak. And the guy whom I met in Sobchak's reception also learned his lessons, because Dmitry Medvedev occupied positions of president and prime minister of Russia. He's still very nice, still be very talkative, but in a sense he's still a receptionist. So this is the book about how Russia's rulers were able to maximize their power, at least for a while. And I focus on institutional and political arrangements of the regime, which is commonly labeled as electoral authoritarianism, the widely used term. Some people use the term competitive authoritarianism, but it's more or less the same. And these regimes, unlike traditional, also called hegemonic authoritarian regimes, are based upon meaningful elections. But the essence of these elections is uneven level playing field, building sort of entry barriers, unequal access to participation, abuses of state power, and multiple instances of electoral fraud, and the global tendency over the last quarter century is that electoral authoritarian regimes replaced classical authoritarian regimes across the globe. However, the picture is quite uneven. We see that some electoral authoritarian regimes are long-standing and durable. Probably the most well-known is electoral authoritarianism in Mexico under PRI, which hold for 7 decades, or Egypt before the Arab Spring. But some others are short-lived victims of so-called color revolutions, although sometimes these regime changes led to replacement of one authoritarian regime to another authoritarian regime, but still these regimes are quite vulnerable. And quite the opposite, post-Soviet Russia may be perceived as a kind of success story of authoritarian regime building. And maybe we should focus on Russia as a kind of crucial case which might shed a light on sources of strength and weaknesses of electoral authoritarian regimes, because many scholars tend to analyze on how these regimes fail. Some people argue that they failed because of weakness of states, or weakness of parties, or because of international influence through linkages and leverages. This is the argument of Stephen Levetsky in Book and Way. Probably it's also useful to have a look on success story of authoritarian regime building, and maybe Russia may be perceived as an example of that. Because Russia's rulers invested tremendous efforts into building of their political monopoly, especially during the period of 2000s. And until very recently, Russia's rulers averted challenges to political status quo using various institutional devices, various tactics of coercion and co-optation, and even thought there was a wave of protest anti-systemic mobilization in 2011, and moreover, more recently, since the conflict between Russia and the West over Ukraine, there is a rising challenge and risks of disequilibrium. One should not say that electoral authoritarian regime will inevitably fail, at least in the short run. So this phenomena has to be analyzed. How people tend to explain Russian political developments? During the Soviet times, it was a popular joke that there are 3 schools of thought in the Soviet Union. There were optimists, those who expected during the Cold War that there will be a major war with the United States, and they tend to learn English language. Then there were pessimists, those who expected the major war with China, and they intend to learn Chinese language, and then there were realists who expected that they should be ready to war with everyone, and instead of learning of English or Chinese, they learned how to use Kalashnikov. In a way, I think that this joke not lost its relevance entirely, but I reformulated it a little bit. In explaining Russia's politics, there are pessimists, those people who believed in some sort of path dependency because of some legacies of history and culture, whatever history during pre-imperial period or during the communist legacy. There are varieties of legacies, or because of culture, Orthodox Church, whatever. So this is a whole bunch of literature. If you compare political diagnostics with medical diagnostics, it sounds like a genetically transmitted disease. We have genetically transmitted disease. There is no cure in at least in the nearest future. So because of this legacy of the past, Russia is doomed to be a non-democratic country. That's the basic explanation. Then there are optimists. Those people who, like Andrei Schleifer and Daniel Priestman, argue that, hey, Russia is a normal country. It's not much different in many ways from various states and nations in the globe. If we see on socio-economic developments, we will probably observe pretty much the same set of problems, which is typical for numerous countries at the globe. Therefore, what we observe now is a kind of temporary phenomena, well, I mean in historical time frame, which may be considered as a kind of side effect of collapse of the Soviet Union, effect of the transformation of Soviet political and economic system into post-Soviet one. So again, using medical analogy, it's something like post-traumatic syndrome. And over time, if economy will develop in a right way, if the country will gradually move to standards of developed nations, this post-traumatic syndrome may be cured. I may be wrong, but some arguments of Henry's recent book closely related to this type of forecast. And finally, realists. Realists are those people who believe that special interests of political and economic actors played a major negative role. Again, if we'll draw parallels with medical diagnostic, it's a kind of poisoning. It's intentional, deliberative, and well-suited mechanism of undermining of very possibilities for democratic politics. So my view is more close to this realist approach, which has no any relation with realist school in international relations, although epistemological foundations of these views are somehow similar. So how these explanations work for analysis of post-Soviet Russia? If we have a look on numbers, socio-economic development, well, Russia is well above global median in terms of GDP per capita, human development, and even thought the degree of inequality greatly increased after the Soviet collapse. It's still well below many third world countries, so socio-economic variables, well, probably not much work. The same about culture. Well, values, attitudes, orientations. Russian citizens are not prime examples of democrats in their hearts and minds, but they do not reject democracy as such, at least in a very basic form of electoral democracy, alternative sources of information, and the like. And even thought we might refer to the lack of democratic traditions, but many countries and regions as a globe have very complicated past, and their legacies are not much more difficult than those of Russia. But if we have a look on agency, on interests of political actors, then we will probably figure out that almost no politicians at the globe who would like to lose their power voluntarily. And then the most rational strategy of new power holders after collapse of authoritarianism is very subversion and perversion of mechanisms of electoral competition and building of new authoritarian regime in ruins of the previous one. However, one might object this argument. If this is the logic of politics, then we should observe no democracies at the globe. It will be endless vicious circle of replacement of various authoritarian regimes. And even though the political history of the globe is by and large the history of dictatorships, but in contemporary world the picture is rather different, and we observe numerous electoral democracies even in the post-communist era. So this brings us to another question. Why democratization occurs in various countries at the globe, but not in Russia? Actually, there are three major explanations of democratization. One is that democratization is a kind of side effect of power struggle. Is a side effect of power struggle among elites. If elite conflict could not be resolved as zero-sum games, then elites have to find a way out and build some sort of elite settlements, and that's the whole story from starting from glorious revolution in 17th century England to recent Moncloa Pact in Spain after Franco. Or it may be an example of a democratic class struggle, conflicts between elites and masses, and basically the whole story of European democratization of 19th and early 20th century is an example of class conflicts and compromises. This is one basic block, democracy as a side effect of non-zero-sum conflicts. Yet another argument is democracy promotion through these linkages and leverages, certain consequences, but one of them was democratization alongside with collapse of the Soviet system. So if we have a look on Russia's post-communist experience, we will figure out that none of conditions of democratization, none of barriers toward maximization of power by politicians were built. All intra-elite conflicts were resolved as zero-sum games. There was zero-sum game in 1991, which contributed to destruction of the Soviet Union. There was a zero-sum conflict of 1993 between Yeltsin and the Russian parliament, and Yeltsin ultimately eliminated his rivals. And finally, the competition for Yeltsin's succession in 1999-2000 between two groups of elites around the Kremlin. Finally, Vladimir Putin and his team won in this struggle and co-opted their previous rivals. All instances of zero-sum games. Mass political participation. At least until the wave of protests of 2011-2012, it was a rather unimportant factor of politics. To put it very bluntly, masses served as instruments of elites. And still this tendency can be observed by now. International influence, well, for good or for bad, Russia is very weakly linked with the outside world in terms of communication, migration, education, and information. No wonder that these linkages and leverages simply doesn't work. And finally, ideology not much matters after the Soviet collapse. It was some sort of Gorbachev's curse for post-Soviet politicians. The major lesson they learned that those who believed in whatever ideas in a very risk of becoming a loser. And ideas played a very much negligible role in post-Soviet politics, at least in Russia. So, if not democratization, then what? In the book I outline two major stages of regime's trajectory, and the third stage is just at the beginning, and it's too early to predict the future. So the period between 1991 and 2000 was early stage of authoritarian regime building, with weak state, with economic troubles, with elite conflicts and the like. While after 2000, because of impressive economic growth, strengthening the state, the political monopoly was established and developed in a full-fledged way. And in 2014, the regime launched some sort of asymmetric counter-attack because of well, perceptions of the major threat, and it sounds as a kind of very risky political game. So, what are political pillars of this regime? I refer here to a statement by Adam Przeworski about political pillars of authoritarianism, such as lie, fear, and economic prosperity. And yet, economic prosperity was one of the major driving force of strengthening electoral authoritarian regime in Russia in the 2000s. And this economic growth allows authorities to buy loyalty, to co-opt their fellow travelers. Well, now it's probably no longer relevant given increasing problems of the Russian economy, decline of oil prices, foreign sanctions and counter-sanctions, and most experts agreed that there will be no way to repeat a success story of the 2000s. Lies, well, the increase of propaganda is visible, and probably some sort of compensation or substitution of economic prosperity, although lies at certain point will meet its limits, just referring here to famous statement attributed to Abraham Lincoln. And finally, the political fear, which demonstrated some sort of tightening the screws since 2012, and particularly since 2014. Of course, besides political pillars, there are also institutional foundations of this regime. I outline here this super presidentialism, which is a major constitutive element of institutional design. Also, the hierarchical system of subordination on various layers of power, not only of the state power, but also in companies and other sectors of economy, and this is known in Russian political slang as the power vertical, and the use of party system as a third element of this political construction. So, what about possible further developments? Actually, I'm very bad at predicting the future, and overall political scientists are not so good in making good predictions. Or sometimes they do right predictions based upon wrong foundations. However, I outlined certain possibilities, such as the preservation of status quo regime and its further political decay over time, some sort of more systematic use of repressions by the ruling group, what is called as Iron First scenario. Yet it's still possible a sudden collapse of the regime in a popular manner, of what tend to be called as black swan effect. And still, it's not excluded some sort of step-by-step creeping and quite probably inconsistent democratization, although I believe that the real practice of Russian politics could develop very much inconsistently as a combination of these trajectories, or turn from one trajectory to another. However, even though today we observe a rather gloomy picture, my guess that there should be no grounds for the deadly sin of sloth. And this book is entitled Authoritarian Russia, but it not mean that Russia is doomed to be an authoritarian country. Why it's such a title? In fact, it's a replica of the title of book published in 1973 by Yale University Press. That book, called Authoritarian Brazil, it was an edited volume about Brazilian authoritarianism, which at that time was kind of success story of authoritarian regime. It was a military dictatorship which demonstrated high level of economic growth, strong domestic positions, and the like. And authors of various chapters discussed the future of Brazilian authoritarianism. One of these authors was future Brazilian President Fernando Henrique Cardoso. So they discussed the future of authoritarian Brazil. Next year, because of economic troubles, Brazilian regime launched very long process of political liberalization, contributed to numerous conflicts between government and opposition. It took 11 years before Brazil had new democratic elections. And in 1989, nearly the same group of authors who produced the book Authoritarian Brazil published a new edited volume called Democratizing Brazil. It's hard to make predictions in terms of time frame, but I do believe that at a certain point I will be able to write a new book called Democratizing Russia, and maybe we'll meet again in George Washington University and discuss this new book. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vladimir. So let's open it up. We have about 20 minutes for questions and discussion. So I'll just encourage people to participate. Yes, please, at the end. And just identify yourself, please.
Anthropology department, graduate student here from the Miles. I have a question about, you use the term anti-modernization. And what do you mean by that when you talk about anti-modernizing in Russia?
Yeah. Actually, Russian authorities post economic development as their policy priority during the entire period of post-Soviet development. And if you have a look on Putin, he actually started his presidency from a very bold move that Russia should develop economically quite rapidly, and he invested a lot of efforts into promotion of growth and development policies. In 2014, these goals were sacrificed for the sake of geopolitics and countering efforts of the West to impose its will over Russia. This is what I mean anti-modernization term.
Great, yes.
A lot of scholars use the term cult of personality when describing these kinds of authoritarian regimes. How important do you think Putin's cult of personality is to maintain this authoritarian regime?
Well, it's a personalist authoritarian regime which is more or less about personality. And certainly, well, if imagine one day Putin will disappear, the regime will face with serious troubles. Yeah? But it's a hardly unique feature of Russia. You may find these features in many personalist regimes. And yes, it's a fundamental problem that these regimes are very vulnerable in terms of their institutionalization. For monarchies or for dominant party regimes, it's less a problem, and some of them are able to maintain mechanisms of power transfer more or less successfully. For personalist regimes, well, it's a fundamental problem, and I doubt that this regime will survive after Putin.
Okay, yes.
Thanks for Alexander Yazov. You mentioned that ideology didn't matter much after the Soviet collapse, and probably it seems that you based more on political and economical reasons and pillars. And I'm interested what place of Russian, so-called Russian world, the idea of Russian world, in current ideology, because I think that our regime, our Putin regime, is very politically or biopolitically based in this area.
Actually, when I talk about ideology, I refer to the system of values and attitudes which serve as a sort of guideline for political decision making. This is why we consider ideology as a sort of shared mental model, as Douglas North put it. Very often, the term ideology with regard to present-day Russia referred not to ideas and beliefs, but rather to some sort of political technologies. And the use of this Russian word is certainly political technology, but it's hardly an ideology. After all, people who promote the idea of Russian word cynical well enough and probably not much belief in what they promote.
But what's about 86%? Are they not shared this idea? Or because ideology is something that imposed from the top?
Yeah, but if tomorrow the television will say something completely different, they will say something else. So this is why I consider this as a political technology. It's not a belief. That's the fundamental problem.
Okay, yes.
Would you say that maybe the kind of going off the ideology, maybe more of a nationalistic idea that these 4 centuries, because you could argue that Russia's gone through about 4 or 5 centuries of authoritarianism, and so maybe even with this electoral authoritarianism right now and the whole corruption and kind of cooperation between elites and oligarchs, the people, the masses themselves don't really want to see a change. I mean, you see a very heavy increase in nationalism, maybe some xenophobia, especially with all these sanctions now. Could you argue that this gloomy picture is what we see from the outside, but inside Russia they don't see a gloomy picture?
Well, actually, there are two different dimensions. One, whether or not people would like to see change. And my understanding is that, it's a contradictory picture because many surveys, many observations demonstrated a strong dissatisfaction with everyday life, with, with corruption, with poor state of public services, education, public health, whatever. And from this perspective, of course, there is a demand for change. At the same time, people are really afraid changes, and that's one of the effects of trauma of the Soviet collapse, because, well, certainly major changes caused major troubles, and this motivation heavily exploited by authorities who said, if there will be major changes, then your life will become miserable. Let's have a look at what happens in Russia since the Soviet collapse in the 1990s, or let's have a look at what's going on in Ukraine and the like. And you know, it's a kind of trap. Yeah, you perceive possible changes as a greater risk vis-a-vis the status quo. To what extent this equilibrium may be maintained over time, it's a question. Yeah. At the moment, there is a kind of fear of major changes. But what we will observe in 5 to 10 years, whether people would like to preserve status quo at any cost, well, it's difficult to say. Let's see.
Yes, Sufyan.
Sufyan Jamakov, Russian University. You said this is a personalistic regime, and that's very important. And I wanted to ask a question about another person than Putin, Medvedev. And was it possible at the Medvedev's time, as many hoped, that there would be some change of regime? Why did it fail in spite of big part of society and elite supported Medvedev? And is it just because of Medvedev's personality? Let's say if Sobchak hired you back then and fired that receptionist, and you would be appointed as a receptionist, would it be different if you were that receptionist?
Well, you know, I choose a different path than those of Medvedev. He remained at the reception, I went out. But speaking more seriously, actually Medvedev was picked up exactly because he was still a receptionist. And my guess is that he was quite frank and open when he said that this decision about some sort of return substitution in 2011 was designed when he was promoted as a president. So it was more or less like a scam from the very beginning. But I wouldn't say that, it was the only opportunity. In 2007, Putin faced with this two-term limit, and then he had to choose between various options. He could change the constitution, abolish term limit, similarly to what many post-Soviet leaders do, or he could propose a new constitution and adopt a new constitution, or whatever. For whatever reasons, he used this trick. He is certainly not alone in the global history. Again, numerous dictatorships used the same type of tricks like this in Mexico in 19th century. But Medvedev never was a kind of independent actor, and my guess that if I, quarter century ago, could choose this path, I would probably behave similarly. But I made another.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, I made another.
You would have no choice.
Yes, please.
Institute of International Strategic Studies. So your general argument is actually what is the nature of this pressure, and is actually the problem is with the regime rather than with the nature of an alternative agenda? Because as I see, the issue is that the regime was developing a sophisticated discourse since the end of the 90s, and this discourse was changing and was adapted. On the other hand, opposition in all kinds was extremely static. And actually, one of the huge problems that we have now, that our opposition is still using basically the same rhetoric they used in the 90s, which is completely discredited because of the association with roaring 90s. And actually, yesterday, on Sunday, we had a major opposition event.
Excuse me, could you please pose your question?
Yeah, sure, I apologize. So my question is there is a chance for actually opposition being developed, and could this be a way to form some kind of real democratic change rather than the regime issues you were talking about?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Actually, one might perceive the wave of protests of 2011-2012 as a sort of first step for re-emergence of political opposition of a new generation. Those people who run the Russian opposition now are not much related with the period of 1990s. They were basically too young for participation in these developments. However, you can't step into the same rivers twice. And what was possible in the 1990s is no longer possible in 2020s because of different political opportunity structure. And certainly political opportunity structure for the present-day Russian opposition is quite unfavorable. It's systematically harassed by authorities. It faced with very high entry barriers to political market, very limited pool of support among activists and the like. However, I wouldn't say that what we observe at the moment is a picture for a long decade. I believe that over time there will be a rising demand for changes. And the question whether the current, very loose and not well-organized opposition will capitalize this demand, or maybe this demand will be capitalized by somebody else, well, it's a matter of further developments. But my understanding that what we observe now is not what we will observe in next couple of decades or so.
Corey, thanks. Thanks for your great talk, Volodya. My question is about the receptionist again, and what has always puzzled me is what the significance of his presidency was. Why was he put there? Was it just to have somebody that wasn't Putin and it didn't matter who it was? Or was there something particularly about Medvedev's agenda and his rhetoric that was important to Putin at the time?
Yeah, thanks for the good question, on which it's really difficult to answer. Because in certain sense, Medvedev served as a receptionist with the boss in absentia, for these 4 years. At the same time, however, he attempted to pursue some sort of policy reforms, and it was not just a rhetoric. Of course, one might say that all this discourse about modernization were just empty words and the like. In fact, he attempted to do something, but if we have a look on output, the output was pretty much negligible. It was like the idea of large-scale police reform, which contributed to basically renaming of militia into police. Brian Taylor wrote about that in an excellent paper. There was an attempt of high-tech developments, which resulted in very, very partial, to put it very mildly, Skolkovo project, which is now nearly forgotten, and the like. And it clearly demonstrated that even some sort of intentions of policy reforms are not much possible in such a regime. But basically, I would say that it was more or less an interregnum of his presidency between two major periods of Putin's rule. So I still, well, regard him as a sort of receptionist.
Yes, please. Nicholas Pope, Security Policy Studies Program. I was wondering, I scanned through the book quickly and I saw your last couple of sentences and where I believe you stated that you sort of see a free Russia sometime in the future. And I just was wondering, what does that look like to you? Does it mean democratic institutions? Does it mean economic prosperity, membership in international organizations? Like, what are the milestones or the markers of what a free Russia would look like?
Yeah, what we mean by free Russia. My guess that, well, it's really difficult to discuss prospects for economic development because, well, we don't know how Russia's economy will develop over time and what kind of challenges the country will face, not only in nearest future but over time. But I do believe that there are no some sort of objective or structural constraints of prevention of Russia to have at least competitive elections. And my guess that at a certain point Russia will have free elections. Russia will have some sort of power change by electoral means, both nationally and subnationally. It's hard to say when it will happen. It's if you browse through these last pages, it's a reference to the term invented by Albert Hirschman with regard to Latin America. He wrote in about 1970s that there is a bias for hope. Yet Latin America became a democracy. We can be very critical about the quality of democracy, numerous instances of corruption, bad governance, populism, and the like. But certainly, well, 40 years ago, nobody believed that it will be a democratic area. Now, well, it is a democracy.
I think we have time for one very brief question, and
Just also a quick question. Why do you think that there's not as much international support for the Russian opposition group?
Let me say that international influence, it's not only about Russia. It's a global phenomenon. International influence can work if it's complementary to domestic developments. But it can't work successfully when it's substitute. And the problem is not that the international support is negligible. The problem is that the domestic support is not so strong at the moment. And I really doubt that for such a big, diverse and complicated country, there is a possibility of immediate effect of international support. In my view, even if you have a look on Ukraine, then while discussions about international influence on Ukrainian regime change is greatly exaggerated by various positions and for various purposes. My guess that major problems are domestic rather than international.
Okay, I guess before we wrap up, you can bestow the award of the sharpest question.
Thank you. First,
final words.
First and foremost, let me thank you for your interest, for interesting questions and comments. And probably the most important question was related to Russia's future. To what extent and in which way Russia will be free. So this is your question. Thank you.
All right, well,